Hello everyone, in today's video I'm going to be walking you through some effective steps and tips to enhance your building in Grounded. Alright, so step number 1 is planning. This is the most important step for building in Grounded. To be a better builder, you just need to be a better planner. In real life, architects use blueprints to map out the design before the build ever happens. Then once the materials are on site, the builders start working. However, the great thing about Grounded is that it's a video game, meaning that we are not permanently locked into our original idea, but that original idea will help save us an immense amount of time. And if you're not sure where to even start, then you can just look for inspiration on the internet and Google what it is that you want to build and just get some ideas. Or spark some creativity. Now, there are a few stages to this planning, which brings me to step number 2, picking a material. Figure out what material you want the foundation to be made out of. When I say foundation, I don't necessarily just mean the actual foundation components in the game. I mean things like your floors, your walls, and your ceilings. These are the core elements of the build. Examples of these materials would be planks, stems, pebblets, clay, ash, clovers, pine cones, and bird feathers. You're going to want to get yourself a nice stockpile of these materials before you start building, so you don't have to leave midway through the building process. So now that you have those building materials, it's time for step number 3, blueprint planning. So what you're going to want to do is build the blueprints for just the very most basic part of the structure. I'm talking about the entire first floor, whether it's on the ground or raised up by pillars or walls, then just the walls in each corner, and the ceiling designs just in the actual corner. And once you've completed that, that'll bring us over to step number 4, starting the build. If you like how the blueprints look, then fill it in. But do not spend all the extra time filling in every single wall or ceiling. Just do the corners for now. The reason I say this is because there are oftentimes you will change parts of the design as you progress in the build. So it's good to just build the basic part of the structure first. And once you've done that, it's going to bring us over to step number 5, the storage room. So as I mentioned in my previous Grounded building tips video, always focus on your storage room first, as you want this to be the center of your base so you can constantly pull materials from this location. You don't need to add every single detail to this room at this moment, just any specific walls or ceilings that you want so your storage containers can be placed here and you can use them for building ASAP. Now, once you've got your storage place in check, that's going to bring us over to step number 6, the quality check. So what you're going to want to do is go through and evaluate your base with that storage room there in place and the actual foundation and structure. Are you happy with how much space you have? Or is the base too big or too small? If you feel it's too big or too small, then go through and make adjustments as you see fit. And then once it seems like it's a good amount of space, then we can move on to different sections of the build, which will bring us over to step number 7, the layout. So what you're going to want to do is go through and look and start at the entrance. You're going to want to think to yourself, is this base going to be multi-leveled? If so, then figure out where the stairs for the next level are going to go. Are you going to be using just the stairs that go straight up and down, or are you going to be using these spiral stairs? Do you want them on the side of the wall? Do you want them in the middle of the base? Outside of your storage room, for example. And so you want to go through and plan this next floor. You're also going to want to start planning your rooms with blueprints for the walls. Examples of rooms would be crafting rooms, decor rooms, your bedrooms, your kitchen, etc. Once you've planned all this stuff out, that's going to bring us over to step number 8, your windows. So what you're going to want to go do now is, I told you earlier, don't fill in all those walls, because what would happen is you would just create this box and you have to make changes to it earlier. So if you took that advice earlier, now we're going to place those windows in some of those empty spots that we talked about earlier. More often than not, you don't typically use a window on a corner, but we certainly do have pieces to be able to do that. But if you choose to do that at this point in time, you can easily just make that switch and you can just move the wall from the corner over to the middle and vice versa. But build yourself some windows, because what's going to happen now is, the blueprints for your windows. What's going to happen now is you're going to look at these now and know that they're just a flat wall. But once you get towards the end of the build, this will be an opportunity to go through and basically just add some additional stuff to that specific section of your build. Things like awnings or balconies. So you can just use this space a little bit better and add some extra detail to your build. It's just good to plan out these windows now. Now, just as a reminder, do not overthink it. These decisions are not definitive, and we are making changes one step at a time. So if at any point you don't like it, you can just cancel the blueprint, and there's no harm done, and you can move it to wherever you want. Also, if you did happen to already build a window or a few walls, then you could easily just pick them up and move them around like I mentioned earlier, or you could simply just break them down and you get your materials back. Again, there's no harm or foul in just trying a few things. I'm just trying to save you a bit of time and having to break down and reconstruct things. So once you've done all this and taken that into consideration, that'll bring us over to step number 9, the completed rough draft. So at this point, you should know how big your base is. You should have the blueprints for all of your rooms be mapped out or laid out. And then you should also have a chopping list for the core structures of your base. And for those of you, if you don't know how to use this, essentially you just go to use the building radial menu. And basically for everything that you have a blueprint currently laid out, you can actually see a chopping list there on your left-hand side. Now, before we head off to gather things that we need for that chopping list, we're going to do a little bit more planning. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to go through and start filling out the rooms. So let's say you want to build a bedroom area that has a bed, you want a cozy little chair, and a few storage cabinets. And then let's say you want a kitchen that has a cookery, a water container, and a dew collector. Now I'm just focusing on the simple things. You of course can get as crazy and as detailed as you want. Just imagine, picture this as if you were moving in real life. Essentially what you're doing is you're taking your box set of, let's say, pans, and you're placing them in the kitchen. You are staging where you want everything to go in this house. So now go through and lay those blueprints down for the items you want in all of the rooms that you want them in. Now, once you've done this for the entire build and you know where all these locations are going to go and you ensure that everything will fit, it's the right height, there's enough room, etc., then what we're going to want to go through is possibly consider an expansion. At any point in time, are you going to want to expand what you currently have? Do you want to leave room for new things you possibly discover or things you want to make later? Consider that now. Once you've done all of this, you will now have an even larger chopping list and you'll know what items you need for basically everything that you want to build, at least the fundamentals of your build, which will bring us over to step number 10. Alright, so now let's be smart with our time and let's do some legwork, and this will save us tons of time. So let's use the example we mentioned earlier. We know that we need berries for the couch, we know we need raven feathers for the bed, and we need acorns for the cabinets and the water container. So we know we have to go to the oak tree for sure for the acorns. And the question is though, how can I get as many resources as possible in as few trips as possible? Well, we know that the oak tree also has lots of sap as well, especially if you already have sap collectors there. If not, there is a large sap node and then a bunch of small little pieces of sap hanging out as well, and typically on the ground. Easily 20 or 30 pieces of sap, even if you don't have the collectors. So what you want to go through is basically stock up on the sap. You'll also find quite a few big boulders there as well. So it would not be a bad idea to farm a couple stack of pebblets as well, because there's a good chance you may need those for some basic things like a roasting spit if you don't already have one, or possibly a plank or pallet holder as well. Now we also know that we need to head over to the hedge, most likely to get those berries. There is another place that there's berries on the map, but the hedge is going to have significantly more. And the reason we would want to head over to the hedge is because we know on the way to the hedge we could stop by the swamp-like area to pick up clay for the cookery. And in the other items we may need the clay for. Possibly we chose clay as the foundation for the base, for example. We also know that we can go through and encounter the bombardier beetles and the larvae and the mites just outside the hedge. We will need the glands from both the beetles and the larvae for the cookery. And mite fuzz is used in so many different decor items, it's virtually used in everything. Now we also know that we need web fiber to make the dew collector, which we know is going to be found in the hedge by just going up top, and there's a whole bunch of just free webs or little spider sacks that we could break as well. Lastly, we know there's a chance that a feather could have dropped on the branches near the bird bath, so that's something to consider as well. So essentially what we've done is we've basically isolated all of these different building materials to just 2 individual trips, one to the oak tree, one to the hedge. There's no running back and forth. There's no not being certain of where things are at. We're just making 2 specific decisions on where we want to go in order to gather these materials and be efficient with our time. Alright, so let's say you've gathered everything up from both locations, and let's say that's all you needed for the base. Then you would just head back to your base. Now, before we move on, if you have enjoyed the video so far, then consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already. Also, a quick note before this next step. This forward type of thinking that I just described by planning out, where these materials are, sounds great in practice. But of course, this is not something you would know to do the first time you are exploring and grounded, which brings me to this very, very important next point. When you are exploring in an area that's unfamiliar, try to harvest everything you can. This will help you start to learn where those harvested items can commonly be found, as well as possible future items you may not have the ability to harvest yet. Now, once you've beaten the hedge lab, which is quite early into the story, you do unlock an ability to scan for resources. That's all I'll say to avoid any other spoilers. Just know that this can definitely help you find resources in the future, and this is certainly a great help, but do understand that nothing will ever help you truly understand an area and become more familiar with an area more than physically exploring it. And on that note, that brings us to step number 11, finishing construction. So now that you are back at the base, go ahead and finish building all of your blueprints and finish putting together all of the walls and all of the ceilings. At this point, you should have a fully enclosed base, and you should have rooms that are designated to specific items. Everything should be laid out. Everything should be built. That brings me to step number 12. It's time to make it look pretty. this is the final touches segment. This is the step you're going to go through. You're going to add your lighting, your awnings, your balconies, your railings, just different elements that are completely not essential elements, but they are items and or structures that enhance the build and will bring it to life. And with that brings us to the end of this video. Now, if you enjoyed these tips and want to see more building and crafting tips, then I recommend you check out this video here.